The moment you try to step in and lead, people will resist you, sometimes quietly and sometimes aggressively. Not because you're wrong, but change for them can feel like a loss. Hey friends, welcome to this channel. I'm Shruti and this is a series where I'll be summarizing key ideas and frameworks that will help you grow, lead, and stay human while doing it. This book, Leadership on the Line, is written by Ronald Hefts and Marty Linsky. Both Ronald and Marty have spent over 40 years as senior faculties at Harvard Kennedy School. They've spent decades studying why leadership so often gets people into trouble and how some manage to survive it. It's almost like an unsung classic of leadership books that you'll not find on the internet, which is why I bring it to you all. This book revolves around three core questions. Why is leadership dangerous at the first place? Second, how do you respond to these dangers? And third, how do you protect yourself while responding to these dangers? And across these three questions, these authors provide 9 practical tactics and frameworks that will help you get the answers. But before we go into tactics and framework, let's start with an important question. What does it take to be a leader?
One might exercise leadership from a high position of authority, but one might also exercise leadership from the middle of an organization or at the front lines. Because if we begin to distinguish leadership from authority, then it's a practice that anybody can participate in simply by seeing a problem in your midst and beginning to mobilize people in your surrounding to work on that problem and build that new capacity.
In my work as a full-time executive assistant in Nepal's one of the most prestigious civil society organization, I began my year and work thinking that I wasn't a leader, rather just an assistant. But over the course of working full year, I realized that leadership was not about my role, my position, rather it was about undertaking of a responsibility to pursue a change. But for that, I had to understand the challenges that I face as a leader. Which brings us to our first question. Why is leadership so dangerous? Here's the uncomfortable truth this book starts with. Leadership is dangerous not because change is hard, but because change can feel like a loss. And people do not resist change itself. They resist what they're being asked to give up. Their power, their comfort, their identities, and their habits. This is where the book makes an important distinction between a technical problem and an adaptive problem. Some problems are just technical. It's like fixing a broken machine. But the most hardest leadership problems are adaptive. They require people themselves to change, their values, their beliefs, and their relationships. That's where the leaders get stuck because adaptive change triggers resistance. And the resistance can be seen in 4 predictable ways. First, they try to marginalize you. Second, they try to divert you. Third, they try to attack on your personality rather than the problem that you're raising. And fourth, they try to seduce you through praises and approvals that pull you off from your purpose. Which brings us to our next question. How do we respond to these dangers of leading? This is where the book introduces its most important ideas. Tip number 1, getting on the balcony. Imagine a dance floor filled with people. Everyone is dancing, moving, following the music, and imagine a balcony above that. And you can see a pattern from that balcony, like who is moving, who is dancing, who is clashing, or who is silent. So getting on the balcony means stepping back mentally while you may still be in action and seeing where your team or where people are actually at.
Going to the balcony and looking down on what's going on helps people to change their course of action and try something different.
That brings us to our second tactic, which is thinking politically. There are 6 frameworks that can help you think politically. First, finding partner. So the rule is to never leading alone because partners reduce isolation and they provide you protection. The second part of the framework is keep your opposition closer. As we discussed about the 3 categories of people in the dance floor, the ones who are your supporter, the ones who are undecided, and the ones who are your opposition. So being Being close to your opposition means getting information because their resistance carries information. The third part of this framework is to accept responsibility for your piece of the mess. The fastest way to get removed as a leader is to say it isn't my fault. Self-denial turns you into a problem. The fourth part of the framework is acknowledge the loss that people make. After you ask people to change something, name the loss that they have gone through, because change is not free and valuing their contribution is important. The fifth part of this framework is model the behavior you're asking first. If people are being asked to change their behaviors, leaders must go first. Nothing destroys the credibility faster than asking people to change while you remain comfortable. And the last framework of thinking politically is about accepting casualties. I think this is the second most hardest truth in this book. Just accept that not everyone will come with you and move along. When you think politically, conflict becomes unavoidable. Different values clash and tension rises, which brings us to our third tactic, orchestrating a conflict. Leadership here means using tension very productively. Temperature high enough to force learning, not so high enough that the system breaks apart. So using tension wisely and productively and not being afraid of it. When the heat starts to surface while orchestrating a conflict, the leaders make one mistake. They try to solve it for everyone. Which brings us to our fourth tactic, give the work back. Adaptive challenges cannot be solved for people. They have to be responsible to solve it themselves. If you try to solve it, you tend to become a problem. So when you give the work back to your team to solve a problem, then the tension again rises and you become the pressure point, which brings us to our fifth tactic, which is very simple yet very difficult to practice, which is to stay calm and observe without reacting and letting the team do its work rather than jumping in. So far, we've understood why is leadership dangerous and how do you respond to these dangers. While you do these tactics, how do you stay alive and protect yourself? First is to manage your hunger. I think it's very important to realize that the risk of leading wouldn't destroy you as much as your unmanaged hunger for power, praises, and connection would. So managing your hungers through self-awareness is the kind of protection a leader needs. Second is to anchor yourself, to realize that it's a role, stupid. So people react to the role you represent and the loss they face, not you. So don't try to defend yourself and keep the focus on the issue. For all of these tactics to work and to lead at the first place, it's important to ask a deeper question. Why lead at all? And if your value of leadership is around giving meaning to your life by serving people, you may well resonate with these dangers. But it can also mean giving up a position of authority because those values do not align with you. And it's okay, life goes on. As we started with strategy and survival, the final piece is somewhere deeper in our soul. In an effort to protecting themselves from the dangers of leading, too many people often give up on their innocence, their curiosity, and compassion. They replace these qualities of heart with cynicism, ego, and arrogance. But without innocence, curiosity, and compassion, you may still be in charge, but you stop being a leader. Thank you for watching.